Good afternoon. I'm Henry Young from the Business Software Alliance, and today I'm here with Kosta Kalpos, who's the head of global government affairs and public policy at Okta, and Tommy Ross, who's the head of global policy at Alteryx. And we're here to talk about 2025 cyber priorities. Right now, we're living in a world with a lot of change and a lot of new activity from malicious actors. And what this means is that businesses are going to need to increase their focus on cybersecurity risk management. And what I'm wondering, Tommy, I'll start with you. What are your company's top three cybersecurity priorities in 2025?
Well, first, I think we're eager to see the United States exercise strong leadership on cyber policy internationally, in particular, working toward interoperability and alignment with the European Union. Second, in order to exhibit that kind of global leadership and to address the increasing cyber threats domestically, I think it's critical that we maintain a strong federal cyber workforce and a strong, robust organizational structure across the federal government to tackle cybersecurity, to share information, to work together across agencies. And then third, as a data analytics platform, Alteryx really believes in the power of leveraging available data, and we'd like to see the government do more of that in the cyber arena. In particular, agencies are now obtaining software bills of materials, for example, that contain really rich data about the health of software ecosystems. Let's invest in that. Let's invest in putting that data to work by focusing on SBOM consumption.
So, Costa, Okta is a leader in digital identity. Given some of the opportunities and challenges that Tommy mentioned, what are Okta's top priorities in 2025?
It's a good question. What we think is that you have to look at how legacy technology is evolving. We're no longer built off a single source monoliths of single source developments where there's one castle, one moat. There's more modular ecosystems now that are using a plethora of apps. The speed to innovation, from 15 years ago, from concept to market was 8-10 years. And now you're having new innovations come 2 to 4 years from concept into market. So how are you able to, integrate those APIs and own that data as the system owner when some of the legacy technologies were built with, not built with that more modular framework? And then you also think about just the data aspect. How are we able to cut down on the risk on the end user if they're putting PII through an IPsec tunnel or through a pipe? Well, I don't think we don't longer need that, to send SSN or send these type of identifiers, through a pipe end to end. You can do it in a more binary way, a yes, no, or, and leveraging a proper ICAM or identity and credential access management in an identity layer platform to be able to look at those type of risk profiles and alleviating them with things like Okta.
So, Tommy, we've talked a little bit about what's happening around the globe and some of what's happening in the executive branch, but let's go down Pennsylvania Avenue. Do you see any opportunities for Congress to act? And what would you like to see them take on?
So I think there's certainly opportunities for Congress to act. From my standpoint, a key topic very much relevant to cybersecurity is privacy, and we've looked for comprehensive privacy legislation for a long time. That's about securing data in the way that it moves through organizations, and we very much need a national standard. So I think for me that's number one. Number two, I think there's a lot of opportunities for Congress to do something that has been needed for a long time, which is to really invest in building a technical workforce, particularly in the cybersecurity arena. Certainly, there are needs across the digital ecosystem, but there are particularly acute needs in cybersecurity. And Congress can take action, I think, to invest in growing the workforce from the ground up.
And Costa, if you could have Congress do one or two things, what would be on your short list?
Tommy made really good points, and I think that we see this a lot with tech companies in different spaces where we have the same vision, even though our niches are different in what we offer. Privacy is a huge impact where if you're looking at taxpayer benefits, ensuring that there's robust privacy standards, but then also, you know, the administration right now, you know, you have the GSA executive order, you have the rewrite of the FAR. There's an opportunity right now to really think about like how are we accelerating acquisition, and then I also think that the Congress hasn't had a strong conversation yet about how are they complementing these rewrites of how we acquire technology inside of the federal government. That can be including language to allow for technologies that are leveraged in federal environments to be more interoperable, and ensuring that the best technologies and the best practices make their way into federal ecosystems. And then also ensuring that you're allowing for more of a perfectly competitive environment when it comes to technology versus an oligopoly of a number of providers with that interoperability language, because now you're saying, you know, we understand that there is this speed to market and there's all these new technologies coming out, and we want to make sure that the federal government is in a position to offer a gateway for those innovations, for that U.S. innovation to be able to benefit our taxpayer services.
So, Tommy, Kosta was talking about speed to market and what customers need. And of course, this brings to mind artificial intelligence. And obviously, there's a large intersection between AI and cybersecurity. How is Alteryx using AI to improve how it delivers for its customers?
Sure. I think we're seeing a lot of different things in this space. Number one, a big picture thing that's basic, but I think it deserves mention nonetheless, is that for information security teams, just like for the rest of us, AI tools are helping people tackle a lot of mundane, time consuming work. And that frees up time and attention to allow information security leaders to focus on strategic considerations that may have previously really been on the back burner. Being able to step back and think about organizational investments and prioritizing those investments to build long run strong cyber organizations, information security organizations. So I think that's really important. I think second, we're obviously seeing a lot of AI powered tools specifically developed for cyber tasks like threat detection and response. And Alteryx and every other company out there, I think, is going to be looking to take advantage of those kinds of tools. And then finally, third, something that we're using in some cases, and I think we'll see, continue to be important, is AI tools used to write better software. So those kinds of tools can help us identify potential bugs as the code is being written, which obviously will help us produce better, more secure code in the long run.
And Costa, on the subject of AI and cybersecurity, how is AI impacting the digital identity space, and specifically how Okta is delivering for its customers?
To Tommy's point, we have to consider AI. I think I read somewhere that the engineer is going to go away because of the use of AI. And I don't think that's accurate. I think that there is a workforce gap in cyber that I think has like a 15-year laggard to be able to catch up to the demand. So if you think about the use of AI with any technology and any piece of software, it's like, how are you making that operator more effective, right? So if I'm able to use AI and eliminate 20% of the scope creep in their day-to-day, either through incident response or through identity access, or just in development, that's a win. You're able to then allow that extra 20% for the more mundane task to make them more efficient. That's something that I think that is a strong emphasis at Okta, is like, how are we able to not just think about how it's benefiting the identity platform, but how it's also benefiting the end user and the customer. And that is, I think, the more stronger value of AI in the short run is, how are we using this as a efficiency tool?
So, one word we're hearing and saying, I feel like a lot more, is harmonization. Tommy, can you say a few words about the challenges that disharmony and regulation create for companies, and then maybe something about the opportunities of harmonizing regulatory approaches?
Yeah, absolutely. Alteryx is not a huge company, and so we have limited resources and have to prioritize, and not just in terms of money, but in terms of people, have to prioritize where those resources go as we look at various security regimes around the world. And when we have so many different, for example, cloud security schemes across different countries, that are similar but different enough to require going through a very similar process many, many times to achieve those different certifications across different countries. It starts to narrow our options in terms of where we can invest resources and thus where we can pursue business in a lot of cases. So I think that's a big challenge. For that reason, I think the administration's recent announcement around FedRAMP reform is a huge opportunity, particularly in the way that they are looking at aligning FedRAMP with existing certifications that companies may otherwise be pursuing. Things like SOC 2 Type 2 that a lot of companies pursue, including Alteryx. So I think getting that across the finish line really should be the first goal. Once that's done, I think there's an opportunity to build on that process to align FedRAMP requirements with other domestic requirements like state ramp certifications, software security attestation, CMMC, which are all related and I think could be aligned in a way that could facilitate smoother processes across all those different certifications. And then also to push for alignment internationally with those various cloud certifications that are similar but different in all these different countries. One thing I will say about that, I think we really need, as I said before, robust leadership by the United States internationally. And if we're going to be able to do that, if we're going to be able to pursue international harmonization, it's really, really important that the State Department maintain its ability to conduct robust global diplomacy. And I think, hopefully the Bureau of Emerging Threats that was recently announced will present an opportunity there. And then I think it's also really important that other agencies like NIST and CISA are able to continue to be strong contributors in this space. I think those are essential if we're going to lead. And I think that leadership is essential if we're going to achieve harmonization on the scale that we really ought to.
Yeah, those are great points. Kosta, what are you hearing from both, obviously from Okta's point of view and from your partners' views around the world on harmonization? How is it a challenge? And then maybe what are the ways that we can work together to overcome that challenge?
Yeah, I mean, let's use the U.S. as a case study. The past two administrations have focused on harmonizing regulations, and there's a need for that. And we're doing that, I think, with like a 10-year back scope of like which regulations were put into place. But you also have regulations that and laws that predate the internet that are talk about information sharing that deal in the internet age. So take the civilian branch, for example. If you have something done at the executive office at the president level and or at the OMB level, and it's put down to agencies, their general counsels will then interpret that inside of their niches and those laws that conflict with some of those more robust cyber policies. I can't remember the agency, but there's something called the Cosmetics Act of 1942 that deals with information sharing that gets interpreted in the internet age. There's, statistical agencies, have information sharing limitations. So it's like, how are you not just making the harmonization at the executive level, but also going down and then seeing, doing an analysis down to the agency level or at the state level to be able to say which areas and policy are these affecting, which ones do we need to update, even if it's just a line to be codified. And then also, how are you interpreting that in a more modern technology age and getting ahead of being able to leverage those best in practice technologies? Interoperability is a big topic that we're hearing now in government, and how you're able to select from the best services and have them play with each one of those products.
So, Kosta, when laws and policies aren't interoperable, what sort of challenges does that create for customers and government agencies?
You have to look at the legacy technologies. I mean, we're moving towards a more accelerated acquisition pathway. We're moving towards a more accelerated marketplace and FedRAMP with the FedRAMP 20X. But there's also this legacy technology that's still in place. So, and a lot of those are built with in-house developments, not accounting for, interoperable APIs or interoperable attributes being shared across platforms. And it's not the fault of any, older technology. It's just that, we were in a different age of technology back when. So things are hard coded down in the stack that don't play so well in a current age. But I think for the federal government, in the U.S., we need to focus more on how are we ensuring that as we do all of the things for the long run, that we take care of some of the things from the past and ensure that those products become a little bit more interoperable, and things that are purchased inside of federal ecosystems allow for competition, not just from large organizations, but also from up and coming smaller organizations. We have practiced this oligopoly approach. If with the old networks model that only had 3 ISP vendors, and then now you have EIS that has more vendors and more competition. I think the more that we have competition will drive down price, but then also you have to make sure that those marketplaces, those centralized buying through GSA, have an element of interoperability to be able to, for all the agencies to leverage and to integrate, because integration also has a cost that I don't think it's accounted for sometimes. And also that accounts for a reverse integration.
Tommy, on New Year's Day 2026, if we look back at 2025, what do you think we're going to think about the successes in cybersecurity?
I think the question on New Year's Day next year is going to be, did we keep our foot on the gas? Because I think we're seeing a rapid advancement in the sophistication of cyber threats. And you talked earlier about AI and how that can help with cybersecurity. AI can also be leveraged by threat actors, and that's going to be a challenge. I think as we see some of the disruptions in the international relations, in part, and as we redefine trade relationships and redefine international alliances, we should expect that some of the actors that may be displeased with our actions will express that dissatisfaction with cyber threats. And so for me, it's really critically important that the government continue to invest in cybersecurity, and like I said, keep its foot on the gas. And if we're sitting here on New Year's Day in 2026 and we have done so, then I think we'll be able to look back and feel pretty good about the previous year. If we haven't, it could be a much more troubling situation.
Kosta, we're at a moment of change, which means that it is also a moment of opportunity. Is there an opportunity that you're excited about in the coming calendar year?
Oh, honestly, the acquisition, I think the relook at acquisition, you have 4 executive orders that have come out in the last 4 weeks. You have the GSA consolidation executive order, you have the commercial first executive order, you have the FAR rewrite executive order, and then you had another kind of complementary commercial first executive order that came out. I really think that this allows for a green grass on, what we think federal acquisition should look like. I always use this analogy. So old acquisition is like the platform that takes a space shuttle to the launch pad. It's that little vehicle that goes a half mile an hour. It's very complex. It's very hard to replicate. And it takes a lot to rebuild. And that's where I think with the GSA executive order, where they're talking about, eliminating the IDIQs and the GWACs and, kind of going more towards niche buying, we need more of like the Pintos, right? We know it works. It gets A to B. It's a smaller acquisition. It's specifically for driving, or if I need a golf cart or a bicycle. I think that that's the way that, we've had riders on the FAR for many years. So I think it's a way to kind of like shake the FAR of some of its original intent, and the same thing with GSA, and then be able to have this conversation where the government wants to incentivize OEMs to do business with them. So they're asking us to provide insights and say, how do we make this more beneficial to you to sell directly to us? We get that the compliance aspect, you can maintain that relationship, but we want to negotiate directly with you. So it's exciting that we both understand that there's a negotiation tactic that needs to occur. So, these next 3 months, 6 months are going to be very critical. And I believe folks should really pay attention to the deadlines on the executive orders, because that's our opportunity to kind of take a bite at this apple.
Well, I want to thank you guys for spending some time with me today, Tommy Ross and Kosta Kalpos, to discuss what's going to happen in 2025, opportunities and threats in cybersecurity. I'm sure we will see all the predictions come true. And I look forward to working with you guys to overcome these challenges.